There we go. Hello, everybody, and hi, Sandesh. Thank you for joining us. This is Road to Tacoma LitFest. LitFest is coming up on May 2nd, and we are doing a lot of community conversations. We are talking to many of the leaders in the community, and we are so delighted that you have joined us today. Those of us who do not know you or who may not have heard about you, this is recorded, so it'll go beyond Tacoma. Introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Sure. My name is Sandesh Sadalge. I currently serve as a city council member here in the city of Tacoma. I represent a district, District 4. For those that know Tacoma, that is the East Side and Lincoln District. It's one of the most ethnically diverse area of Tacoma. Also one that has been historically under-resourced. I was not in politics before this, but I love working and doing something really good for my community over here. And I'm so happy that we have a Lit Fest coming this year to our city.
Thank you, and we are delighted too. And you mentioned East Side. That's where we did the Festival of Light. We'll do it
We
again
did.
there. We'll probably do another very cool festival around food and storytelling, and food and nostalgia, food and memories, food and relationship. So we are really working on that. It's very early stages, but we love East Side so much that we decided to double down. Not just Festival of Light, but we'll do another one there. But today we are going to talk all about your inspirations and your favorite books and what kind of genres do you like? How often do you read? What do you read? So let's start with some of the genres that you like.
Yeah. Well, for my personal pleasure, I definitely got into science fiction and fantasy. I guess I'm a nerd.
Hmm.
When I was younger. I like a lot of different types of books, but definitely that's the one that I probably have the most amount in my uh, physical bookcase, my virtual bookcase. Um, I used to say my gateway book was a book that my
Hmm.
sister actually turned me on to. Actually, a lot of books that I had. I'm the youngest of three. My sister was a voracious leader and helped reader, excuse me, and got
Hmm.
us onto books. So my gateway book in science fiction and fantasy is a book that my sister just sent my way, and it was The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, and it's the first book of the Wheel of Times trilogy. I couldn't even tell you how many books there are. I think 13, 14, 15 books in that. I did finish it eventually, and that got me on the road. And there's many other authors in that genre that I've read a lot. That's usually my escapism kind of um, um, like fun kind of read that I'll usually go to a few times a year.
Did you say your sister recommended that, or did you picked it up because of your sister's reading?
My sister had it, and she reads
Uh-huh.
all sorts of stuff, and she's like, "Oh, this is a good one. You might like it." When I was younger, and then she gave it to me, and that's how kind of I fell into the science fiction. And I remember many years prior, my cousin gave me The Hobbit, and I liked it, but I never really got into it. Maybe I was too young. It was when my sister kind of gave me this old beat up book, and it said The Eye of the World, and I started reading that I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, I've been speaking with a bunch of people, several people who are running book clubs very successfully, and one of them, my former colleague at World Affair Council, she has been running a book club for about 42 years. And when I asked her that, what is the single most important thing when you form a book club? And she said, find people who you are friends with, who are like-minded, and who you like to hang out with. Um, and you're mentioning sibling, your sister, and this has been my case too. My dad was a voracious reader. He would always be reading, always newspaper. And I remember going to grocery shops, and he'll pick up these packages and he'll read all the labels, and he'll point it at me and say, "You should read this. They've put a lot of effort to write these labels because they're not much space and they have to say everything which is legally required." So it's something about hanging out with people who read, and that really is very contagious. It picks
You're
on us.
absolutely right. Yeah, my parents, my siblings, they all really pushed reading, and it was a form of escapism, right? This is pre is the pre-internet. I feel like I remember going to Barnes and Nobles and Borders books when Borders was
Hmm.
there, and I'd sit in the
Yeah.
corner for a few hours and read a book.
Yeah, and bookstores are so amazing. We did our first community event at a bookstore, and I remember reading about that bookstore. The founder had mentioned in the local newspaper that bookstore is not just a place where you go to buy books. You can buy books online, you can go get books from the library, but bookstore is also a place where you get to meet people uh, and get to know them and browse books together and talk to each other about the characters and the storyline and what inspires you. So it's a community place. And it was amazing. We were so thrilled to be there. Um, all right, so science fiction. That's so unusual, you know. And I was thinking I'm going to talk to a council member. Science fiction was not the
Science
genre
fiction and
that I thought.
fantasy. Eye of the World is more on the fantasy side of things, but yes, I do read quite a bit of that. Robert Jordan, Brandon Sanderson.
Uh-huh.
I remember reading Person's Card. Like he wrote Ender's Game. I remember that. There's so many that I'm probably not even remembering. All these
Yeah.
books that I read. I could probably go and pick out a few.
You also mentioned Chitra Banerjee as one of the authors
Yes,
that you like. Which one
actually.
of her and what about her?
So it's really funny. There was this, I feel like there was a time in the late 90s. I was born in 1980, so the late 90s is, late teens for me, early 20s. And there was a number of these South Asian women that got very famous, right? You started with Arundhati Roy, who wrote God of Small Things, Jhumpa Lahiri, who won a Pulitzer for Interpretive Maladies, and later she wrote The Namesake, which is also a great book, and also was one I was considering talking about. But I think there's one that I think a lot of people don't know this name as much, and Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni wrote a book called The Unknown Errors of Our Lives. First of all, I love the title, right? It's this gorgeous title that, and especially when you're 19, 20, 21, whenever, however old I was when I read this, it's great. It's a collection of short stories. I forget how many, honestly. It's been so long. It's been 20 something years since I read it. And I read that first. I read that before I read Interpretive Maladies, and it was one of those, being someone who's born in India but grew up here in America, you have this, there's this unique upbringing of not really feeling belonging, and you're not really sure. And I was at that time in my life where I was trying to figure out who I am as I'm becoming an adult. And I read this beautiful book, these beautiful stories that really touched on primarily the experience of women um, coming into the juxtaposition of India versus America, and these stories that kind of talked about that culture clash, assimilation, all those kinds of motifs that I feel like I was feeling myself. Um, I also feel like it is one of those books that made me feel seen for the first time. It also challenged me because it was from this female perspective. It actually helped me kind of understand um, uh, a perspective that I hadn't thought of for my mother. It was just a beautifully written book at the right time in my life. I couldn't tell you what story it was, but there is a scene that I remember to this day, and it is this scene where there is a woman in India who is meeting her arranged husband, and they're going through this scene. And later on in that story, I believe they're in America and they're older, and there's a number of things that happen. But when there's this beautifully written scene about her not being able to talk to that individual because it's the family's talking. And as a way to try to connect with who this person is, she sees his shoes and then like steps into his shoes. And it was just really beautifully written. And I thought that was just a gorgeous sentiment. And it gave me a little level of kind of empathy in a way for my mother and my father. They were arranged. um, to have someone write very honestly but beautifully about things that I was embarrassed about, right? Growing up here, no one heard about arranged marriage. Oh, what's that? That's weird, right? Um, I just remember this being this kind of book that was very almost formative and flowering for me when I was I gotta say I was probably 20 or 21 when I read it. It's a year or two. I believe it was published in probably, I don't know, 98, 99, something like that. Um,
Mm.
Never heard of her. And I just remember, loving nearly every single short story that was in there. Very approachable book. And then later on, I read Jhumpa Lahiri, and I'm like, oh my God, this is also beautiful. I kind of did it in reverse order. Um, are you familiar with Chitra Banerjee and her book?
Little bit.
Yeah.
I have some very dear friends from Kolkata who are voracious readers, and these were also my classmates back in college, and they had a huge impact on me. My father obviously was a big reader, but also these friends of mine, particularly from Kolkata. Just so amazing that I remember all of the voracious readers, and I think the top four or five who were very close to me, they were all from Kolkata, and they always had book in their hand, almost always had a book in the cafeteria. They were very comfortable reading wherever they want to read, and I wasn't like that. For me, I had a set time and place. I had to have a lamp. I had to sit somewhere else to read, but not for them. They always had a little book in their bag. They'll pull out a book and just read in cafeteria, a book in DTC buses in Delhi, terribly crowded. People are, but they could just bring their focus and read 2 or 3 pages and then get off and then read 2 more pages and then one more page. But I've heard that name from many of my friends
She wrote I
who
mean,
grew up in Kolkata. How do you read?
yeah.
What's your reading habit like?
Nowadays, I
Hmm.
tend to read um before I go to bed, but I used to read anything, anywhere, anytime, anyhow. I miss one thing I do miss about being in New York City. For a long time, even when we had the internet, you had no internet service in the subways.
Uh-huh.
And I often had a book. And living in New York City, I always took a subway. And it used to be that getting home on the subway was like a reading time for me. I would read often on the subway, get home, and if it was something that was very engaging, I couldn't wait to get home, get on my sofa, and continue where I had left off and move on.
Mhm.
To me, um, for a large portion of my life, reading and commuting were synonymous. It was also escapism, right? So I'm commuting to work and I want to not really think about it sometimes. And then
Yeah,
especially going and leaving work if I wasn't going out and hanging out with friends, it was let me just read something and relax.
yeah, yeah. And I know that you miss your mom a lot, and you spoke about her a short while ago. When you read, that does it because writing, one of somebody was asking me why are we doing LitFest, and I thought LitFest is stories and storytelling, and it's such a great way of memory making. Writing is memory making. You're writing it down, and it's almost permanent forever. You can read something about somebody's life and miss someone who because it's written in a certain way, or true for movies also, but words have something about words, a little comma here or a little colon here, and a long sentence followed by a very short sentence. It does something to you, especially when you miss somebody. Do you have that emotion when you read?
Absolutely. Now more than ever.
Mm.
I feel like now I have more memories to think about, more experiences to consider, and
Yeah.
it's funny you're talking about,
Mm.
me thinking about my mother who passed away a few years ago. But I also think about what I was thinking when you were talking about this was also this idea that, you know, I wonder how I would feel if I read Churn the Ride today, you know, in my 40s versus when I read it when I was probably not too much older than Caulfield was in book, right? That was
Hmm.
another great book that I absolutely loved. And I remember I read it at the right time again.
Hmm.
In other books, like I wonder what I would think of if I read Unknown Errors of Our Lives today instead of when I did.
Yeah, it clearly has a deep impact. My mother lives in India. I miss her every day. She is, in her mid 80s, and there's something about being away from somebody you love so much, and when you read, certain words, certain authors, writers, poetry, they squeeze the distance. Sometimes I feel like I'm much closer to my mom after reading certain poems. I
Mm.
feel like she's around. Like I can extend my hand and she will touch it, and I can hold her and I can feel her hair, or I can, she's not that far. Reading has this magic. Writing has that magic that can really squeeze these long distances, especially, like in my case, my mom is so far away. In your case, you lost your mother, and now you're reading things which reminds you of, reminds you of her. And it is so interesting that it's so precious. Reading can do so much to us, and writing also. But in these times, the data that we are seeing, reading habits are really going down. More and more people across the world, including.
Then you went mute. You hit mute by mistake.
Sorry, uh, you know, being so precious, the idea of reading can do things to you that you can't imagine. It brings you closer to people. It helps you see things that you otherwise, didn't think about it. You miss people in a certain way. You realize how much you miss people in a certain way because you're reading. And yet, the young population, the young people are not reading enough. The reading habit is really going down. The attention span is very short. Um, does it? Do you worry about this as someone who is in a public office?
I worry about this as a new father, honestly, of a little
That's right.
boy. And actually, when you first mentioned this, I thought about him like, man, is he gonna have time to sit down and really just appreciate the journey of a good story? It
Yeah.
takes time to develop and 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 grow and really become a thing. Yeah, I absolutely worry about it both as a father and then in public life. Reading is absolutely one of the most important skills you have to have as an elected official. We read a lot. Like there's a lot that is sent to you, and it's very boring.
Yeah.
Lot of policy, lot of whereases and therefores. But it's important because that is how we make policy, that is how we make laws, that is how we make ordinances, this is how we do the work that we need to do. And you need that ability to focus and think. And I do, yeah. Um, I am concerned that might be eroded in some way.
Hmm.
Um, and there's got to be a good balance. It is really weird because I realize how much my child is just going to be growing up in the internet era for better of think of a better term, because I was born in India where we were the only household on our street that had a TV when we got a TV. And came here where you didn't have internet, you had libraries and you went there and you spent time there. Now you have your phone and you can access nearly anything you want on your phone and read it, and AI will give you a short summary of it, right? And yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Those are, it's a new world, and how do we keep the best of the old world and incorporate that? Um, I'm looking
yeah.
forward to his journey, my son's journey, and how he's going to grow through it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a new world for them. We'll have to just make things more fun for them to make them, I read because my dad read. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the only reason. He was a librarian, and I saw him read all the time. He would take me to his office. He was surrounded by books. I ended up working in a bookstore when I was in college. So it's so unusual, it's very unusual nudges that happens to you and you develop a habit. And
yep,
now we have books after books on how to develop habits. There are so much around the literature on how to develop habits. It's just immense and it's wonderful and very scientific. Um, but when you especially in your work, you're in public life, you have to read all sorts of things and you have to juggle with so many different kind of people and issues. Do you feel like sometimes in the middle of the work that this is an issue I'm juggling with? Maybe I should go pick up a book and read on this subject. Do you do that?
oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, now it's like Googling it to try to find a book on the subject. I will tell you, like, there's a couple of books I did want to mention. When I became a council member, a book that was introduced to me that helped me understand the basics in a way that I hadn't thought before, around
Hmm.
homelessness is a book called Homelessness is a Housing Issue. uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
Coburn. And very, first of all, very well written book for what it is,
Yeah.
which is really a summary of a lot of really deep research that's been done for
Yeah.
decades,
Hmm.
that go into homeless policy and theory, and yeah, absolutely. Um, Another book that I would talk about in terms of this one actually helped me more in my professional career. So I didn't actually touch on what I did for a living for 20 something years. I had a degree in math. I did data analytics for a very long time. I created several data analytics teams at three different companies.
Hmm.
There is a book that I think has one of the worst titles I've ever heard of. It is one of the few books that I have repeatedly bought copies of and sent to people, and was is the book that I asked my junior analyst when I first hire to read. It's a pretty quick book to read, but the title is terrible. I actually hate the title. I hate telling people this is the book because I'm like, it's not what the title says. The title is Super Forecasting: The Art and
Oh.
Science of Prediction.
Uh-huh.
Right? Have you read this one?
No, but I
No.
remember you mentioning it. I remember that book. Dan
Terrible.
Gardner.
Yeah, Dan Gardner and
Hmm.
Philip Tetlock. Great book, very well written. I feel like the title turns a lot of people off because they think it's some sort of weird new age thing. And really, if people are aware, there was this growth. It's called behavioral economics, right? One of the early books around behavioral economics that I would suggest is called Thinking, Fast and Slow. That was I am drawing a blank.
Daniel Kahneman. It's
Daniel
a
Kahneman.
yeah, it's one of the
Yes.
Nobel Prize winning author.
One, they came in. I'm like, I won the Nobel Prize in economics, and I have a psychology degree. How did that happen? And those are really good books that give you some very theoretical understanding of the fact that, economics is based on the assumption that everyone is making a rational thought choice, but we as human beings are not rational beings. How do we measure and how do we talk about irrationality that we are as people? And then it started this whole world that now we have language for, right? It's things like we started with rhetorical fallacies, and they've come to cognitive biases,
Hmm.
confirmation bias, and Dunning-Kruger, and all these other things. And I love those books in many ways. I'm like, oh, these books are amazing. They only give you a theoretical thing. Super Forecasting the Art and Science of Prediction was a book that actually, in my opinion, takes a lot of that information and makes it approachable from the standpoint of how do you get people to make better decisions together. And that was an interesting world. I really changed the way I kind of thought about problem solving, leadership, how to get really smart people together and make better decisions because I had a degree in math, right? So for a very long time, you solve math problems, you're right or wrong. Like there was not, in many
Yeah.
ways, that's kind of where I came from, right? You get into business, you get into talking to people and collaborating and thinking about solutions. Well, the real world is a little fuzzier. And guess what? Usually you can't have that one lone genius that comes in and solves everything for you. It's usually groups of people working together effectively that come up with a solution. So, I'll tell you the story of super forecasting because it's actually on the book cover. I checked. The whole story about this is Philip Tetlock, one of the authors, was hired by the Department of Defense after one of the biggest boondoggles, and they even admit they thought there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and then we went to war. We invaded a country because we were sure there were weapons of mass destruction, and we didn't find any. And the Department of Defense goes, "Oh my God, how did we get this so wrong?" And they hired this guy named Philip Tetlock because he had at the time done this other work on how wrong experts are at predicting things. And the Department of Defense sponsored a contest, and that contest it doesn't matter how you do it, you have to tell us things. And they're questions that are time bound and can be converted to kind of a yes or no, right? There are things like, will the renminbi get stronger against the dollar in the next 3 weeks? Will there be a major conflict in South America in the next 6 months? These are things that you can have a yes or no, and there's a way actually of measuring the accuracy of those types of predictions. They have to be time bound and have to be converted to a yes or no. But the questions, when you read them, are policy, economic type questions. Um, and you could come to this contest any way you can. You could come up with just a random number generating machine that would just give you yes or no's. You can come up with some weird algorithm. What they found was that the teams that were coming and answering this thing very accurately, there were individuals that were very good at predicting these questions. Um, and in fact, when you got those individuals together, they often, in fact, in almost every case, got even better to the point where it was phenomenally unlikely that it was just a fluke. Like people, there were types of people that could get together and really look at these very deep kind of policy questions and be very right in the future in what they were thinking was happening. And then the question became, well, what is it about these people and how they think that that lets them do this? And and the short answer is these are people who exhibit the qualities of what's called a growth mindset. Um, they're intelligent, but they weren't super intelligent off the charts. They were generally well educated, but they weren't all PhDs. They were relatively successful, but not super rich people. But one common thing they had was this thing called having a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is this mindset that allows you to ask really important questions, such as what information do I have that supports A? And what information exists that may not that supports not A? And they had this ability to kind of take that and work in those shades of gray and say things like, well, I'm not 100% sure, but today I'm 70% sure. And tomorrow, this new information makes me only 50% sure. And this new information now makes me only 20% sure A is going to happen. And the book actually goes into a lot of these in more specifics, but there are ways of actually teaching that and learning this kind of growth mindset. And that's why I would have my analysts look at it because as much as there's information, there's data, to make good decisions, you have to ask yourself both questions. What information exists to support what I'm trying to get to? And what information is going against it, right? And to be able to
Mhm.
weigh that. And that actually helped me become a better leader in business. It helped me, I think it helped me in my marriage, quite frankly. It for me, it gave me real uh, approachable ways of exhibiting those kind of characteristics and doing it in my life. So again, I think it's a terrible title, but one that really spoke to me uh, more professionally and quite frankly, I still use those skills today as a council member and looking at policy.
Yeah, I mean, how to make a decision, that itself, we don't teach that in colleges and schools, and but we make decisions all the time. And there is so much literature just on that decision making as a genre. One of my favorite in the genre is called Decisive. It's
Hmm.
just hands down one of my favorite books. It's basically teaching us how to make decisions. And when you are making a decision, it's almost like driving. You can take a wrong turn, you can take
Yep.
a wrong exit. How do you know you have taken the wrong exit?
Yep.
And what? How do you do? How do you fix it? How do you come back? Confirmation bias is one of those things.
Yep.
In most
How to
cases,
be
people don't even know.
comfortable that you made a mistake. I think
Yeah,
that's one of the early things I had to learn is how can you be comfortable knowing that you made a mistake and then having the skills to negotiate your way out of that, like to kind
yeah.
of, navigate yourself, not negotiate, sorry, navigate yourself
Hmm.
out of that is a key skill, honestly, that
Yeah.
sometimes people are so afraid of making the wrong decision, they don't want to make a decision. That's often the case, right?
Yeah. You mentioned confirmation bias, for example. Most people don't even know they have confirmation bias. It never occurs to them. They keep going. It's like you have taken a
Nope.
wrong exit. You don't know you have taken a wrong exit.
Yeah.
You don't know. How do you fix something that you don't know? And this is where this particular, and it's all science backed. A lot of the decision making is
Yes.
hardcore science backed ideas about how human brain works, how. And one of my, one of the favorite thing that I have learned from the authors that I'm talking with and writers who have very solid discipline, they can write stuff. And I am so amazed to see how much aware they are of how human brain works.
Mm.
They are so the self-awareness is so high amongst writers because writing again is a discipline. It's not easy. It requires a lot of physical discipline. And one of the writers told me that he feels very easy to write once he figured out two things. And I think he read it in one of those books that we are discussing, something about the brain. I forgot what book. But what I remember him telling me is that your brain is by default is going to distract you. Right? You have to do something so that your brain understand that it doesn't have to distract. But by itself, your brain doesn't know. You're naturally designed to get distracted. So he said that he read that if you signal your brain, you have to give signals. And he said in his in order to develop a good writing habit, he always writes at a certain time at a certain place.
Hmm.
He said, I always write at that table at his house by that window at a certain time. And he said,
Hmm.
how does it help? He said, I don't know. But what I read is that I have to signal my brain to not distract itself in the process, not distract me. He said, so what is the signal here? He said, the signal to the brain is it's time to write. If you do this
Got it.
repeatedly, your brain says, okay, this is the time to write. Your brain is not going to go anywhere. But whereas what I have done in my life, and I've failed terribly, is like I'm going to try different places to write. Exact opposite. This is just exactly opposite way of not be, to develop discipline. You're changing places, you're changing times. But in my mind, I had this romantic idea of, oh, I'll go to a library and write, or I'll go on a rooftop and write. I'll go at a public place and write. You're never going to be able to write. Your brain is not with you. Your brain is going all over the place. But if you signal your brain, if you do something and tell your brain that, hey, help me write, you have to give some signals. And the signal is this place. I'm here. This is my place. And your brain is like, okay, you're here, write. And it was so amazing that all of this literature is written. I mean, it's right there. You buy a 200-page book, a $15, $10 book, and it changes your life. And that's the single most important thing that that writer told me
Yeah.
had happened. And he said, I could not have become writer. I could not have written this much if I did not know that one little piece of information I got um, from how brain works. So it's so interesting, and it's almost it's such an amazing amount of education in reading. But let's talk about your reading. Who do you ask if you want to read something? Where do you go look for a new book, or do you listen to podcasts, or you ask your friends and families? Where do you get the recommendations for books?
Uh, there used to be a lot of, I mean, we had so many different places I would get recommendations when I was younger, usually family, friends. My wife is part of a book club, so there have been a couple of books I've read just because they were reading
Hmm.
those books. Now I guess I'm a little too reliant on the recommendation engines that are in like Kindles and other things now. But they're never very good because they just basically, here's another book that's exactly like this other book that you read.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I love just accidentally hearing about an interesting book and reading it. I don't think I would ever, years and years ago, before even the movie came out, and the movie didn't do all that well. Because I couldn't understand how they could make them. They did a good job with the movie with what the book was, but the book was so good. David Mitchell, Cloud Atlas,
Hmm.
not a book I would normally pick up. I read it, and I'm like, oh my God, my world just changed. His use of language, his creation of language throughout, um, the 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 evolution of the language throughout that book. Have you ever read Cloud Atlas?
No.
It's a great book. David Mitchell, I think, is a British writer. It is a series of very connected stories at different times in history, I guess, from the past to the present to the future. And what's beautiful about each of those sections or parts of that book is the language changes. This is a writer that changed how he was using like it felt like the accent of the people were changing, the way people were talking in the book were changing. And that was beautiful. But that was one, it's always wonderful when you get this like accidental book you'd never heard of, no one's ever told you, and it's like this, hidden
Yeah.
treasure that you like uncovered and you read it and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then you want to share it with everyone um you've ever met.
Yeah, yeah. And then then that starts a new journey. You find something and then you keep digging, you keep going and you keep telling other people. And then you find somebody who has read that book and they say, hey, you should read that. And there's an article about this. And there's an interview of this person you should watch. And there's a fun fact about the life of this author that you may not know. And that's how, so many social bonds gets built because of this. Something started off with a little book and then you
Yeah.
bonded
Someone
instantly.
recommended something, you read it, and then all of a sudden you're like, great, I'll read it. Um, I wish I had more people I was talking to regularly to get recommendations of today's book.
But all that you have read and that you continue to read, and also include the movies that you
Hmm.
watch, any movie, any genre, any country. Uh, could you recall a character that inspires you a lot, that you want to be like, especially in your public life?
Oh, so many. Um, there's so many that my brain is overwhelmed right now.
Hmm.
I do remember the first character I really felt, and if I'm forgetting the name of the character, is the
Hmm.
protagonist in The Namesake, because I really felt like that life
Yeah,
was my life, right? And that was one of the first ones. I inhabit a lot of the characters. I love that about books, is to become that
yeah,
character. The life of Pi, I
yeah.
could like early, some of the early stories, like I really remember. I
Hmm.
remember some other characters. I remember feeling so much of that beautifully captured angst in Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield, and this kind of, you know, just feeling that same emotion because I read it right around that same time in my life. Um, who else? Several other. I mean,
And
those
you
are quite a
mentioned,
few.
two films that you've mentioned both have a common actor in it. Irfan Khan is in The Namesake,
Yes,
and he's also in The Life of Pi.
Irfan Khan. It was an absolute tragedy when he passed, honestly. He's been amazing in so many things. He was also in The Lunchbox, right? Did you? Oh, you went on mute again.
This is just putting me on mute. It doesn't want me to talk, Sandesh. When you talk about Irfan Khan, it wants to hear from you.
Irfan Khan. I forgot that Irfan Khan was in those other movies too. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
in all
I
the two
read the
movies you
books
mentioned.
first.
Hmm. Yeah. Who are your favorite actors?
Oh man, I just remember Salman Khan all the time. Irfan
That's
Khan has to
Bollywood.
be up there. He's just been
Hmm.
so ubiquitous when he was around. He just had that so many act. I mean, that's a hard one. That one's more for my wife because she was into film and was going to be in filmmaking early in his career.
Oh, wonderful. But when when you read something and some character speaks to you, you're reading, or it reminds you of somebody, or some moment of your life, or some phase of your life, uh, how do you react to it? Do you write it down, or do you just think about it? How do you preserve those connections when you watch a movie that you feel connected with, or reading?
I don't think I do enough. I think I just, I think I meditate on it. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. And unfortunately, there are times when I'm like, man, I wish I remembered that feeling again.
yeah.
Right?
But that's true for so many of us. You are just
Yeah.
courageous. You're just courageous to say it. We don't say it. Most people don't say it. But the
I mean, I
bombardment of
forgot
messages. I mean, there were.
until
I was
you
reading.
asked me,
Hmm.
I forgot a lot. Like when I had to think about these books, I remember I'm like, oh my God, I've forgotten about the unknown errors of our lives
Hmm.
until you asked the question, and then this scene popped back into my head, right? I'm like, oh wow. Or as we're talking here, I forgot so many things in these books, and some of those are coming back to me right now. But you're right. I do love the feeling when you finish the book and it's a really good book and you take a moment
Hmm.
before you step back into your life, right? It's that in between, I guess you could call it a version of purgatory between the experience of the book and the story you heard and coming back into reality. And if it's a really good book, I rem I like holding on to that moment.
Hmm.
And I miss those moments.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that's so, and it's such a common experience, and a lot of us do that, but we don't reflect on it. So you are able to recall all of this. This is so precious. These moments, uh, but we do it, but we forget. We don't. I wish we were better at it. If we knew how much these books do to us and how much we relate to these stories and how much we reflect on it, we would read more. I think we'll go back and read
Yeah.
more. uh, the value of reading is not articulated enough. It's, a lot of it is in the reflection of what you have read, but we are just so busy. And it's so easy to get the next book. It's just one click away. There's always a recommendation somewhere nearby. You're on the computer, some books pops up. Opening a Kindle, before you even see your book, there are 50 recommendations already there. So it's so easy to get access to so much to read that has taken away our reflection time. Don't you think?
Oh, it absolutely has. I mean, modern life has taken some of the reflection time away. Um,
Yeah.
it is those moments though that are important, and I hope I can pass that on to my son in some way, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Well, when you and I know, how old is your kid now?
He is 6 months and 6 days
Already.
old. Yeah.
That is right. I saw him first in October when you came at the Festival of Light. He was a tiny little baby. He's already 6 months
He's
now.
yeah.
So talk about, that's a big moment, And I remember when my son was born, I was just being a father. I was constantly telling myself. I used to utter these words, like physically utter these words. That I'm a father now. I am a dad now. I'm a father now. I should know about fatherhood. What should I read? Who should I ask about being a father? Did you do that? Was that pressure on you that now I'm a father, a new father? I have to read or find out from others what it's like to be a good father?
Yes, I still haven't found all the sources. I will ask as many questions.
Hmm.
Maybe because so much is now, we live in a more modern world where um, we get unsolicited advice, and none of it has been bad. But I
Yeah.
was reflecting on the fact that, I think there was probably a time way back when you had, a lot of mothers would give unsolicited advice to one another, and the
Hmm.
bad advice would be much more, I don't know, stereotypical. But it's been amazing getting advice from just anyone who's a parent right now, and helping us out. I hope to read some more books. Actually, one of the funny thing is when you just reminded me, one of the f first books in a very long time that I checked out of a library, because I remember thinking, I'm like, man, I don't remember the last time I checked the book out from the library. Um, with the pandemic and everything, kind of there was a pause, and I
Hmm.
feel like I never went back to the library until my kid was a month or so away from being born, and we go to the main Tacoma library branch, and we go into the section about parenthood and new parenthood, and we like check out like 4 to 6 books. It was probably
Yeah.
higher than that. I'm actually trying to make myself look reasonable
Ve-
over here. We took out a bunch of books and started
ve-
flipping through them. Like, oh my God, we're gonna be parents. We should get some books. We should get some books and read them.
but, yeah.
Where's the manual? Where's the manual on this child? There's no manual. They don't give you a manual.
I know, but again, a very common experience. People, when they walk into the bookstore or they go to library, just walk around the floor of the library and seeing different books. The tendency is to just pick lots of books. We don't end up reading all the books. Sometimes we don't even read any book. We just read the title,
Yeah.
bring them home, put them, and never read. But the fact that we wanted to pick those books up, the fact that we looked at those books and said, "Oh, I should read that. I should read it." That act itself I think it's a testimony that we are so wired to read. Otherwise, why would you book six,
Absolutely.
seven, 8 books when you know you won't be able to read all of them? And
Absolutely.
yet you pick all the time. If you go to the library again, Sandesh, I bet you're going to pick 5 more books. You go in
Oh,
that
absolutely.
section. Yeah.
Oh, and I'm eyeing like the kids section. I'm like, I'm definitely coming here with my son, sitting down and doing like reading time with him and discovering books. Um, and we have
Mm.
books already that we're showing him. He can't read, but he just sees them in front, just getting used to that.
All right, this is 6:09 now. We're a little bit over
Yeah.
time, but thank you so much for being so
No,
candid
thank you.
today, Sandesh. It was so
This
lovely
is
to
a
hear
great
all these.
conversation.
No, I really enjoyed. You said so much that normal people either don't think about it or they're just not, they're scared to say those things. It's, I don't know if it's the right thing to say or not, but these are the facts of life. This is what books do to us. When we go to the library, we just pick up books. We are so wired to read those books. Uh, and thank you for sharing such personal moments with your mom's memory. I know you miss her a lot. You talk about her a lot, and I relate to it a lot. I lost my father way back, but my mom, the distance,
Hmm.
is not nearly as painful as in your case. You lost your mother, but that distance is very hard, and a lot of books and readings soothes me a lot. It just almost like an ointment. It brings lots of memories that are very soothing. Thank you for sharing today. It was so wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a great
You,
conversation. Have a good rest of your night.
you too. Thank you, Sandesh. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye.